Okay, welcome to another session with the Football Mentor. Today's session, I'm going to try and progress from the earlier session I did of playing out from the back through pictures. Okay, today's session is going to primarily focus on the centre backs and how they will play into midfield. Again, and you might also have a look around with the midfield players on their movement to go and get onto the centre backs, which is going to be the main focus of this particular session. I'm going to give you two options on how you might do your first part of your practice. Then we're going to go into a bit of a skill practice, which will open out into a small-sided game to finish the session off. So your primary players are probably going to be the two centre-backs within this, with your secondary players, your two midfield players. And again, depending on numbers, you might have the fullbacks in as well, or you might use the fullbacks as the next session, part of the session, if your numbers are not allowing you to have the fullbacks in. So let's get on with this first session. Okay, so the first part of this session is set up, and I have got my team set up, my players set up in a bit of a position as if it's a goal kick. Okay, if you don't have a keeper, yourself as the coach might serve this in, or a spare player who's not involved in this who you might rotate in as the session progresses. Okay. Again, I've got 3 here, but again, if you've got 12, you might just then have extra midfield player in here and they just take turns to move through the particular part of the session. Again, depending on your numbers, this can be mannequins, could be cones, just to represent a midfield. I'll say it's in this particular part of it, I've gone with a 4. I know in a bit more of the more modern game, the midfield is either a 3 or a 5, depending on what you're playing against. But I've just gone and replicated a 4. So you might have this going on one side of the pitch and again on another part of the pitch. If you've got, say, 6 players, you've got 12 players, can have one going here, one going on another part of the pitch, and these could be cones, mannequins, something to represent a midfield line. And the way this works is quite simple. This practice starts by being played out to the centre back from a goal kick, and then just for a part of it, the centre backs will move the ball across the pitch to each other like we see. While this is going on, our midfield players behind will move and rotate to receive. So I might have my 6 might come in here to receive, my 8 might go away, my 10 might stay out, might come in, again depending on what you're wanting from the practice. He might come in a little bit, because then I'm going to play in to my 6, who again, depending again on what your practice is, because he's receiving in front of the midfield, I might want him just to bounce back to then allow to play through. I might want him to in, and because he's received in front, play across, which then allow to 10 and play through. Okay, and once we play through, I might either have some coned gates for a player to turn and dribble through, or I might have some small nets just to turn and try and pass into to feed. Okay, again, if you have a second keeper, a goalkeeper, he might be up here. So as soon as they're through, they finish the practice by having a shot. So just some different options of how you might work once you've gone through the midfield. Okay, so it starts again with different movements, different patterns and what you're looking for off your midfield. This time I might get 6 to come in, but he goes away. But instead of this pass, as this pass is played, he comes away, and I might have 10 drop in between. Not in front, not behind, but drop in between to play, and just work on different patterns. As again, I might have 6s come in, and on this particular one it's drawn 8, and as it's played in, my pattern might be to play in to number 8. As the thought process is how I would explain to my players of what's going on and what I want from them. So this pit is unopposed. There's nothing in there in terms of pressure, and we can just simply work on our midfielders' movements to come and get the ball, our different rotations, our different options for the centre backs when they have the ball, where to play to try and break lines and get forward in this. And as I say, once we've gone through the cycle and we've completed into the net, we go and reset and we go again. in, centre-backs keeping the ball amongst themselves like they do, while the midfield goes through different movements, and we go through with the coach where we want them, body shape, how we'd like them to receive, and the centre-backs decision making around, do they play in, do they play out, do they play here. And again, you might even talk about, if this is all, would they go over the top? Again, that's up to you on what you're working on as the coach. So it's just focusing on these and their decision making within this part of the session. Okay, the other way in which you might run this session is if you've got all your players in. I've got based on a set of 12 here. Okay, depending on your numbers, you might end up having the fullbacks in 2 and 3 if you've got 14, or you might end up having a centre forward in here if you've got 13 as a number 9, just as a bit of a shadow, a bit of movement. But if we've got 12, we would set up. So the same principle as the first session, except this is a live midfield 4. It's not mannequins or cones, obviously it's opposition. And 4 and 5 will do the same as it did in the first part, in the original practice unopposed, where play out and they're just going to keep the ball between them, potentially using the goalkeeper or the start again player in here, keeping possession. While this is happening, my midfield players will begin looking at movement. So 6 might come between, try and create a bit of a ball into feet, comes in, bit of pressure, bounce it off, goes away, playing through. But once they're successful in playing through, I've got 2 players on this side which would represent centre backs. They'll receive, play into those. Okay, once that happens, these players start to keep the possession, and these players could just come the other side and go again, but now as if they were yellows and they're going to receive, or they might swap places. 10, 6, 8, drop in, these become the line, and now these are going to try and look at their movements to go and get the ball into feet. That's dragged in, so again now the centre back's decision will be to play to the player in behind, because it's created that as we're looking at the decision made by that player. And when they get it, A, can he play in, or B, there might be a little bit of a combination in, play in to them centre backs, who can then continue to go left and right with the ball, while again we swap the midfield trio. You might actually do that player this time because he stood out the last time. However you want to do it, they quickly swap over while these are just retaining, moving the ball left to right, and then we go through our movements. Maybe he's going to come this side, he's going to come away, attract a bit of attention here to open that pass, it's going to open that pass. He's staying to drop 8, and it's opened that pass. He's recognised and come into the gap, depending on obviously the distances and angles, and we start working with our players' movements, timings and everything. So that way everybody's having a go at midfield, receiving. I've got my centre backs doing a little bit like how a centre back would do, keeping the ball left to right, keeping possession, waiting for the right opportunity to drive through. I mean, you might progress that you allow the centre a bit of tackling going on, which in that case might be if the centre back steps, I'm allowing 7, 8 to press. What might change there? Might that be 4's angle, the goalkeepers? Might it be what 6 does? But it allows us to progress and look at work on around so we can get out from the back. Do they not close the angle enough? And 8 is clever enough just to drop a little bit so we can fire it between the 2. Again, that's for you as the coach to look at what's happening and work on with your team in terms of making the decisions playing out from the back. Like I've said, if you had the numbers, you might have the fullbacks in as well, so they're just working up and down like fullbacks are. So it comes to 5, 7, 9 and 6 have all squeezed this. So because I've got fullbacks, he's going to play out and round. But like I say, you might, if you don't have the fullbacks, this might be another session where we look at this, maybe take these players out and have one working midfield pockets while we look at playing wide to the fullbacks. But again, depending on your numbers. But the first part of this main focus is these playing and working with these midfield players. Could this be intelligent enough in the modern game we see players dropping into the fake fullback position in midfield. That he has it, he might drop into the fake fullback position to open up the ball into there, which is obviously another reason why you may, if you didn't have the fullbacks, another area which you might be able to coach your midfield players to start looking at doing, which happens a lot in the modern game. Okay, into this next part of the practice, and we're setting up an area. Okay, depending on the size, the numbers, what you want to work on, be anything from you, a 40 by 30, 40 by 40. I mean, it just depends on your players, your numbers, your size. There's no set, it has to be. So again, that's what you could set up. Okay, again, initially this is going to be a 12-player practice. So I've got 6 in the middle, 2 defenders, and in this particular set, 2 goalkeepers. Okay, there's 2 end zones on either end. Again, the size you dictate and play around with that as the coach, depending on what you need. So start of the practice, 2 centre-backs and 2 centre-backs are both locked into their zones. Okay, and none of these players are allowed to go and press that at the moment. Okay, so the practice again begins with the ball playing to the centre-backs, okay, who will move the ball across to each other. If they want to use the keeper, again, because that may allow you to work a little bit on the keeper's movements to go and be good angles to receive. Okay, their job is to move the ball across. While this is happening, my midfield 3 are moving and rotating around the pitch, trying to find good areas to get on the ball. Obviously, the opposition are trying to stop them. So again, your second coach might work with just the yellow team. So while the Reds have it, I'm working offensively, where I want my midfield players to move. Okay, and the other coach is working defensively. Okay, so we've got this 10 switched off, and then can we have 4's missing? Recognise that 6 has come and dragged 8, plays into here, and then just can you get a shot off? These are allowed to defend and block for now. Okay, not allowing them to come out just yet, but can you get it in? Can you receive? Nice quick shot. Maybe you might come in and set 11. Again, these can recover and tackle if they want to. So it's like a bit of a 3v3 in the middle. Set, shot, set, whatever they want to do. Okay, once we've had the effort, goal, save, whatever, yellows would take over possession, and we would go the same way. Now, yellows are trying to create the space to play in, press, and he's bounced it back. Once it goes back though, it has to go across once before it can come back in. Okay, it can go back and forth again, a third, a fourth, whatever you need, but it must come across once. Okay, he might peel away, he might peel into there, he might peel into there, he's dropped in, he's picked up 8, which means now we can play into 6. 6 is now squeezed, 10's recognised, pick the pocket and come in, and these are going to try and go the other way. Obviously, once possession's won, okay, again, do we play here to secure, or do we play first time forward and attack? Again, that's a decision as the coach you would work on with your team. Okay, but the primary objective is when these have it, again, we're looking at the movement in here to give these the options to make the right decision when they're playing in and playing out from the back. Again, we're talking numbers. If I had 14, I might allow one team to have their fullbacks on the outside. Okay, but I might allow them only to work up and down this little bit here and here, not allow them to go all the way, so they're just an option for the centre backs to play, but they can play into midfield. But once he's on this side, I want the combination playing here, so I'm not allowing them to play back out. So if I did have fullbacks in, I might only allow them to come up to the halfway point of the pitch, because my focus would be on the centre backs being able to play them. Again, that's to say I had 14 players. Again, 14 players, I might just gone 4v4 in the middle, giving myself a centre forward on each side. So I've got my 3 that are going to do my midfield bit, and then I've got my 1 that's always going to stay high as a centre forward. And again, the different problems that creates in the midfield defensively, as the coach, you would look at working out with. Just a couple of different ways in which you might play around with your numbers. Okay, progressions that you might end up using on this that might help is I might allow one of these players to go and press to apply some pressure in here. Again, what does that open up behind if these have pressed? What do these two maybe do differently? Can they exploit? If he wins it, can he put it in? Can we play? Drop in. Oh, we've recognised and play. Because the different problems that's caused the yellows, different problem it causes the reds, and how can they find a solution for that? So one might be allow them to go in to press the ball. Okay, another progression might be allowing a player to receive in there. Again, just to train a bit more realism, keep the game up. He might be allowed to go in just to allow a bit more with the defenders. Can he receive in and shoot? Might he bounce it back and shoot? Just to lift up the realism a little bit and start getting closer to the real game. Okay, we might allow from here, the centre-back can now carry the ball out. Okay, again, what difference does that create for this 4? What difference does that make to the midfield? Okay, again, what would this centre-back do with the ball when he's there? So we can still need to continue to focus on their decision making. He's squeezed off, so he might just pop it off and then drop back. Okay, unless you're Sheffield United, where he might pop it off and he might continue because 8's come in. Again, as the coach, it's yours to play with. But for now, if that happens, I've only got one left in here. Okay, and if he plays it back in, yeah, my goalkeeper might come out and be the one that we play across. You might have got rid of that rule by now, but you might keep it again just as a way of continuing with the practice. So the centre-back might be able to step out. And then you might then allow rotation. So if he steps out and again plays in, goes on the 1-2 from here, he might be allow him as a bit of rotation to become this player. So that obviously if he's caught up pitch, again, more realism, the closest player is going to become the centre-backs. Possessions lost. So again, another progression you might add to it just to keep the practice. And then finally, we are just going to take away the end zones like this. And to finish in a small-sided game, there is now nobody locked in. But we continue to focus on with 6 has it. What's these players' movements like? Again, that might change now because if he comes high, we're going to get pressure off the centre-backs, whereas before that wasn't happening because we were allowing this. And then how does that change his decision? How does that change his decision? Is this decision still on if he presses? Is he clever enough to spot the gap and allow him to play through? Again, if he presses, does he play quickly? Split, 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 and plays through. Comes feet, whatever you're looking at to develop with your players. So you end up in a small-sided game to finish the practice off. Okay, so that's just a little moving on from the original one where we worked in the pictures. You might come back to them in this practice, remembering with the midfield players when we went through the picture pattern. Where did you play? What did we look for? Within this part of the session, where can we find those pictures as well? But then making the centre-backs have the decisions of the pictures that we saw. They're on, I can play, but they're not on. What do I do differently? So we're now looking at where they pass, timing a pass. Do they step in? Again, if they step in, what's their decision? Things like that. Again, with midfield players, do they receive in front? Do they receive between? Do they receive behind their opposition? Okay, and again, managing the opposition is also part of that. If there's 2 of you, brilliant. Take a team each, work, get them in, so you help keep the realism. If you are coaching on your own, you might again have to manage the opposition a little bit to try and keep the realism within the session. Like I say, I went through a couple of different progressions, but again, whatever progressions you might have with that, there's loads of different things you might be able to do with it yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and obviously I will put some more content on soon. Thank you.